Welcome back to another live presentation. Thank you for joining me. I'm David Crow. I'm the founder of Floracopia. And this is our weekly event where we are discussing a wide range of topics, starting with essential oils, moving into botanical medicine, and then moving into related aspects of spirituality and meditation and ecology and all the things that are related to plant medicine. So last week, I left you with a little notice that I was going to be introducing a mystery oil. And for those of you who have been following what's happening, well, it's no longer a mystery. It is the Bhutanese Jatamanzi Oil. And this is a world's first. And I have the oil here, and I wanted to share with you several things about it. This is the Bhutanese Jatamanzi, the world's first Giadamonzi oil distilled in Bhutan. So this is quite a story, actually. It's really the essence, the heart and the soul of what Floracopia is all about. And all of these elements came together over a period of almost 2 years, really. So there's quite a bit of work, quite a lot of time that went into the production of this essential oil. If you have been following our newsletters or seen some of the things that we've posted, you may have come across the video about the production of this oil, showing the entire process from the harvesting all the way to the distillation. So I'm going to give you a little background story on how this came to be, because it's really representative of a lot of the oils that we offer at Floracopia, and it's really the whole story of Floracopia in a way, because we're not concerned just with selling essential oils. We're really concerned with the entire global network that we have with artisanal, small-scale boutique producers of essential oils. Artisanal distillers producing boutique items, you might say. And the story of how these things come together is really what Floracopia has been about now for almost 20 years. So this story started online because I was looking for someone to talk about cordyceps, which is a medicinal fungus. And I wanted to interview somebody who was an expert on cordyceps fungus, who I could have as a guest on the Plant Medicine Summit that I host every year at the Shift Network. And so while I was looking online, I found a gentleman by the name of Karma, who is in Bhutan. And he has been working for several years with the yak herders of Bhutan to sustainably harvest the cordyceps fungus. And we began to talk about his work, and he asked if we might be interested in different aromatic essential oils that he could produce. And I said, well, yes, of course. And so he asked, well, is there any interest in producing Jatamanzi? Which I immediately said, yes, of course. It's a bestseller, and it's very, very difficult to get. Our sources have been primarily from Nepal up until now. And it's a very therapeutic oil. It's got a lot of benefits, which I will tell you about. And it's difficult to keep in stock because there have been a lot of issues with the supplies over the years. So I immediately said yes. Well, it turned out he didn't even have a still set up. He wanted to start this project from the very beginning. So over the last year, I have been guiding him, supporting him, as he has gone through the entire process of ordering the still to be manufactured in India and then having it brought into Bhutan, which has been an incredible adventure just in itself. And then him working with the yak herders to produce a new source of income by gathering the Giadamonzi, and then bringing it down the mountains from the high alpine regions into the area around the capital of Timbu to his place where he set up a still. So the entire process is now documented, and you can watch that whole story. It's a beautiful story, and it shows what goes into producing this little bottle of oil. You can now see the entire process, setting up the still, getting it functional, and one of the best scenes, in my opinion, is when the Lama comes and blesses the still. I mean, it's classic Vajrayana Buddhism distillation, you might say, in Bhutan. So you can see what it takes to get this rare aromatic treasure. So there's several important issues to consider with this. And of course, one of the main things is the sustainability of the harvesting. And that's because Giadamonzi is in great demand. It's a member of the Valerianaceae family. It's Nardostaki Giadamonzi, but it is a type of Valerianaceae, and that's what it smells like, and that's how it works therapeutically. But it is traditionally a very important medicine in Ayurveda. The root is dried and used in powder form, so it can be taken internally. It goes into many, many formulas, and it is also distilled for its essential oil. Now, in Bhutan, for the last many years, the harvesting of Giadamonzi has been done indiscriminately. It has been plundered and basically shipped out to India, because the demand in India is so great for it as a medicine and an incense ingredient and for distillation for essential oils. But in the last year, the Bhutanese government has begun to take very strong steps to protect the natural resources, because the king has recognized the value of having botanical medicines as a sustainable crop. So this is something that I learned from Karma with his work with the sustainable harvesting of the cordyceps. And there's a system that is in place for letting the cordyceps fungus regenerate, which is that the regions are divided up in such a way that harvesting can only happen on a rotating basis every 5 years from a particular region. And that allows the fungus, the caterpillar fungus, to regenerate every year. And so this is the same program that is now in place for the Giadamonzi. So I can report that the harvesting of the Giadamonzi in Bhutan is now highly regulated. And this is the source of the oil that we have. So we were only able to get a very small amount of the oil. And that's because, first of all, this is the first year that Karma is doing this distillation, and because the supplies are now going to be very closely controlled. And so I am pleased to say that we have only a very small amount because it's being sustainably harvested. So this is the backstory, and this is really what we are looking for with all of the Floracopia oils. We're really looking for, how does this support botanical preservation? How does it support the biodiversity in a sustainable way? So this is a very big part of the story. And this is also happening, and has been happening to different degrees, in Nepal as well, where our Giadamonzi oil comes from there as well. So this is really a celebration of a unique series of events that have come together over the last year to produce an aromatic treasure. And it is a treasure. It's expensive, and there's only a little bit of it, and it's selling very quickly. I think we have enough at the current rates to last for a couple more days, and then it will be gone. And we will be able to just enjoy it as a one-time distillation until we get into the seasonal harvesting with it. So now the next thing that I'd like to tell you is about its very interesting fragrance. And some of you, possibly many of you, are familiar with the Giadamonzi oil that we have carried, and have seen some of the difficulties that we have had over the years procuring it from good, reliable sources. And one of the questions that came in recently was, can you describe the fragrance of Giadamonzi? And so I will try. So I will go ahead and do the exercise that we do in aromatherapy and as perfumers, which is we put a little bit on the perfume strip and notice the top note, middle, and base note, and also follow this as it dries out because the fragrance changes. Now, the fragrance is closely related, of course, to its therapeutic actions. And the first thing that I can say is that this is very soft compared to the kind of intense pungency that the Nepalese Jatamanzi has. It's very, it's not as intense, it's softer. But it has a very characteristic valerian fragrance, and some people don't like that fragrance. It is described in less than flattering terms as things like a wet dog and maybe some dirty laundry. But those notes are really minimal in this oil, and instead, what I would say my first impression is that this actually smells like cedar wood. It smells like wood notes. And at the same time, it also smells like roots, which is where it came from. It came from the Giadamonzi roots, which are very similar in nature, therapeutically and fragrance and taste, to valerian roots. So the oil, then, is an interesting combination from the olfactory standpoint of a very predominant note that smells like a cedar chest, actually. It smells like cedar wood, but it also smells like the forest floor. And the notes of the forest floor, how can I describe that? Well, it's earthy, but it's not just like dirt. It's actually like moist soil that has moss in it. So it's kind of like a mossy, earthy, rooty kind of note mixed with sort of sacred wood, all right? Cedar wood, sacred wood, and a little bit of pungency, but it's intriguing fragrance. I would invite you to check it out. And if you have the Nepalese, you can also compare the two. This is much lighter. Now, what does this fragrance have to do with its therapeutic effects? Well, this is where we can get into some very interesting topics that have a lot more to do with essential oils and aromatherapy, which, of course, those of you who are familiar with my work, you know that I'm always looking for an excuse to talk about more cosmological, spiritual dimensions other than just the oil itself. So this oil is actually a very profound oil therapeutically in terms of its effect on consciousness, right? So this is a doorway into talking about, well, what is consciousness and what is sleep and what are dreams? That's what this oil is related to. It's related to the subconscious, and it's related to the processing that happens within the brain and within our dreams and the sleep state that helps us to purify our memories, and especially our traumatic memories in a spiritual kind of way, a biological way that's related to the sleep state. So this oil is related to the subconscious mind. Now, isn't that interesting? At least I find it interesting that this oil comes from the soil. You can smell it. It comes from the dark forest floor, and it's dark oil, and it is related to purifying the subconscious mind. So we can start to see some of these correlations, and we can also start to open up the whole topic of, well, what is sleep and what are dreams and what is actually happening when the brain is storing subconscious traumatic memories, and how does Giadamonzi help us with this? Well, first of all, Giadamonzi, being a member of the Valerianaceae family, means that it is a sedative. But it's not just a sedative, because people think, well, you know, I can just take a bunch of valerian before I go to sleep, and it's going to help knock me out. And it might in some cases if you take the valerian tincture or make the valerian tea. And this is an interesting way to approach using this, because you can use the Giadamonzi oil along with the Giadamonzi tea or the valerian tea or capsules of valerian, you see. So you can actually combine an essential oil of the same species or a very similar species with an herb that does the same thing. And so that's a combination of, say, valerian root for sleep and Giadamonzi oil for sleep. Now, one of the things that I can say right away is that valerian essential oil is one of the few essential oils that actually does exactly what it is supposed to do over and over again repeatedly. And there's very few essential oils that do that, because essential oils are highly subjective by nature, because the effect is happening through the olfactory system. And if it's happening through the olfactory system, there's going to be a lot more personal preference of liking and disliking and emotional memories and so forth. And we see this with many essential oils. Even just take something common like lavender. If you present lavender to 100 different people, you're going to get a wide range of reactions. Some people like it, some people like it a lot, some people don't really care for it, and some people will, sorry for the interruption, some people will like lavender a lot and some people won't really care for it at all. So what does that mean about Giadamonzi? Well, Giadamonzi is actually something that has predictability, and that's unusual with essential oils and aromatherapy. So predictability means that an essential oil will do something over and over again, and for a majority of people, and we can predict what it's going to be. Now, we can predict that more with herbs if we consume them internally, and that is something that is different between taking herbs internally and aromatherapy. Aromatherapy, because it works through the olfactory system on the brain, it has a more immediate effect, but it tends to be less predictable. And a good example is, well, if you don't like an oil, it might not even produce the benefits, because the benefits are coming from the enjoyment of the oil. Whereas if you take a laxative, it's going to do something for you, whether you believe it or not, or you like it or not. So this is one of the things about Giadamonzi, is that it is quite predictable. Now, what is it predictable doing? Well, the traditional description of Giadamonzi and valerian both is that they help people sleep. But that's not all they do. And valerian doesn't always do that for people either. And the reason for that is, if we look back in herbal history, what we see is that plants were much more diverse in their functions than the way that they are being described now. And the way they're being described now has a lot to do with the fact that you have to put a product on a retail shelf. So if you have a plant with a lot of different functions, where are you going to put it on the retail shelf? Is it going to be for strengthening the nervous system? Is it going to be good for eyesight? Is it going to be good for sleep? Is it going to be good for giving you courage? You know, there's a lot of different functions that valerian and Giadamonzi have, and valerian has been sort of narrowed down and described as a sleep herb, but it's really much more complicated than that. And what it does, and this is what Giadamonzi does also, is that it strengthens the nervous system when it is depleted from stress and overwork in people who are more of a cold constitution. All right? That's a classical definition according to Ayurveda. So what that means is that valerian and Giadamonzi oil have somewhat of a warming kind of effect. And that explains why some people take valerian and they feel overstimulated from it, because they're not that kind of cold, depleted, tired nervous system. They're more the heated type of nervous system. So we have less concern with that with Giadamonzi, but there is something very interesting that Giadamonzi does repeatedly. And I have heard this for years and years. It is psychoactive. It is psychoactive in the sense that it stimulates dreaming. And that's where we get the link between it being a root in the darkness of the forest floor and the way that it's working inside the subconscious mind and the biochemistry of the root and the way that it stimulates metabolism of consciousness. So that's how I think of Giadamonzi, is that when we use the fragrance specifically, it stimulates metabolism in our subconscious. It stimulates brain chemistry in such a way that it helps us to digest things that are building up in the brain. And here's a very interesting thing to think about. When we sleep, we should have deep, restful sleep, and we should have healing dreams that metabolize everything from the day before, and before, and before, and before. Now think about how much information, and think about how much emotional stimulation we get every single day. Now, are we metabolizing all of that? Are we actually waking up refreshed? Are we actually waking up with the brain chemistry completely purified and reset the way that sleep should do? Well, there's an interesting term in Ayurveda, which is called ama. And ama means undigested waste material. And this is a huge subject that I'll talk about in future presentations, but I'll introduce it here. Ama means something that is left over from incomplete metabolism or digestion. And there is such a thing as mental ama. Mental ama means that we have not processed mental information or emotional information completely. So this is what PTSD is. PTSD and traumatic memories are memories and experiences that the brain has not metabolized fully. This is where deep sleep becomes very important, and where healthy, healing dreaming becomes very important, because if we are not metabolizing mental and emotional information, it actually causes the brain to change physiologically and physically as well, in such a way that the nervous system is always in a state of high alertness. And that's why when people have PTSD, they never sleep well. They may sleep for 10 hours, but they never get into deep sleep or healing dreams, because the nervous system is always hypervigilant. Now, this is something that I have seen Giadamonzi be very helpful for, and not just for people with classic symptoms of PTSD. In a certain way, I think it's fair to say that with the conditions of the world now, that almost everybody is being traumatized, from different things, whether it's, the fires that are around us, or, the economic stress, or the uncertainty of the pandemic. I think everybody is developing some level of PTSD now. And it's definitely part of a pandemic of anxiety and sleep disorders that's going on. Now, Giadamonzi is predictable in two things. It will help people sleep, and it will give them very vivid, interesting dreams. I've seen this over and over again. How do we use it? Well, I gave you a suggestion. You can combine it with valerian. Take the valerian internally. Don't take too much, though, because it can be very heavy. But Giadamonzi is lighter. In Ayurvedic terms, valerian is said to be very tamasic. In other words, it kind of creates mental dullness. It'll knock you out. It's kind of like cannabis in a certain way. It's a heavy kind of influence. But Giadamonzi is said to be sattvic. In other words, its lightness. It is more balanced on the constitution, so it's easier to metabolize. Here's what I suggest that you do with it. This is 1 drop is all you need. 1 drop. It is Jatamanzi. Okay, 1 drop, and yes, somebody already has heard this recipe. This is a classic method of using it in Ayurveda. But 1 drop, or 2 if you really like it, into a teaspoon of warm sesame oil, and then massage that on the bottom of your feet before you go to bed. And it will permeate through the soles of the feet, of course, which will allow some internal absorption, but the fragrance is very pervasive. And not only that, but the fragrance is extremely tenacious. So you might want to just check it out a little bit first to see if you like it. Some people don't like it, but here's the thing. I have heard this over and over, introducing people to the Giadamonzi oil. They first say, well, I don't really care for this. But then what happens is after a few nights of getting good sleep for the first time in months and months, people love it. In other words, the fragrance becomes associated with deep sleep and rest and waking up feeling better. And so the brain changes its associations in such a way that they become very positive. The brain loves the fragrance now because it's helping it. So the first thing that people report is that Giadamonzi breaks a cycle of intractable insomnia. And this is a wonderful thing, actually, because any of you who have had intractable insomnia know it's terrible. And if you can just get a good night of sleep, it's blissful. So Giadamonzi can produce a kind of blissful sleep. And the second thing that people report is that they have very active dream life. And this is important for many reasons. It means that the metabolism, the digestion of mental ama is starting to take place. And where this becomes really intriguing is when people report that they have healing dreams that are very symbolic, that are related to suppressed painful memories. So many times we actually have old pains that are in our heart, grief, loss, traumatic things that we're trying to avoid, sort of separating it out, keeping it out of the conscious mind. But it surfaces in our dream state in a way that helps to resolve it. So this is an intriguing aspect of the way that this group of herbs, the Valerianaceae family, work, is that they're actually healing for the heart, meaning the spirit, meaning the subconscious mind that is storing any painful memories. And so even though this root is in the darkness of the soil, in the forest, in the high mountains, it's actually bringing light into the subconscious mind and helping us to digest things and to see things in our dreams. Now, I think everybody has had the experience that when you have a healing dream, that it tends to happen in the early morning, after the whole digestive cycle has been completed, and it tends to be associated with very positive, blissful body sensations also. And this is an indicator that the nervous system is starting to relax. Now keep in mind that images that arise in the dream state are actually strongly associated with body sensations that are happening. So for example, if you eat a big pizza with a lot of garlic and have a couple glasses of wine before you go to bed, you're going to have dreams of fire. Right? That's the pitta type of dream. And if you are overstimulated, then your nervous system is going to also reflect that. Or another simple example, if you have dreams of big waves coming at you in the morning, it probably just means that your bladder is full. You see, so there's a lot of interesting symbolism in dreams that happen because the brain is interpreting body sensations. And so the reports that I hear about, and I see that some people are posting some testimonials here, very nice. The body sensations that are reflected in the dreams are actually peaceful, blissful states of relaxation. All right. But I will mention here that this is dose dependent. Okay. And you have to be careful, especially if people are overheated, overstimulated. Don't use too much. And some people will abuse this because people think that more is better all the time with essential oils. And so I will tell you a few cases that I have heard, and one of them is quite amusing actually, but people have tried this basic treatment and it's worked to some degree, and then they think, well, I'm going to escalate this, and I'm going to just wear Giadamonzi all over my neck or pour it all over the pillow before I go to bed. And it stimulates so much dream activity that they wake up exhausted. And sometimes the dreams aren't that pleasant because the brain is overstimulated, and so they're going to see that. They're going to be running around all night in their dreams instead of resting. So what we look for then is just find the right dose. Don't use more than one drop in the oil first to start with. Now, I'll tell you just in closing here a really interesting story about how psychoactive this oil is. I gave a presentation with a live audience. Imagine that. We used to have live audiences. We'd get together, and there were maybe 50 people in this weekend retreat, and we were passing around all the oils and talking about them, and I was passing around the Giadamonzi oil, and I was telling a story about how it works on the subconscious. And this woman came up, and she was in her late 80s, and she told me that she had traveled all over India and had 30 gurus and went to the Amazon and had ayahuasca. She was a spiritual seeker and had been doing it for decades and decades. And she wanted to know about the psychoactive effects of Giadamonzi. And so I said, well, just put 1 or 2 drops in a teaspoon of sesame oil, put it on your feet at night before you go to bed. I just repeated myself. And she came back the next day, and she said, and I was asking people, if they had any testimonials from the oils that we had studied the day before. And she said, I want to tell you about my experience with Giadamonzi. She said, I had psychedelic dreams, kaleidoscopic dreams of mandalas all night long. And that's, what Giadamonzi will do. It will stimulate brain activity. But she was describing it as really like a hallucinogenic or an entheogenic spiritual experience. And so I said, well, how did you use it? And she said, well, I just put several drops on my little finger and I massaged it into my sinuses. Well, of course, if you're going to apply essential oil into your sinuses, that's really dangerous. You can burn yourself. And I have heard of several cases actually where people have been told, put undiluted essential oils into your sinuses, use them as undiluted as a vaginal douche. You can put them in your eyes. And these are things that make the news actually when people do this. These are like adverse reactions that get out there in the databases or the emergency rooms. So please don't do this. But Giadamonzi oil is a root oil, and she survived, and she had kaleidoscopic dreams of mandalas all night long. And the reason that I wanted to tell you that is simply because it's very psychoactive. So you have this oil now, and again, this is part of the Florocopia story from a sustainable source, a real treasure. You know the backstory now about how it was produced, artisanal distillation, and you also know a bit about its fragrance, and you know a little bit about its psychoactive effects. And it's got a lot of other things that we can say about it, but I think we're running out of time here, so let me just go ahead and switch over. I just want to say thank you to everybody for not just joining me here, but also all week long. It seems like there's a lot of people coming over. And you can also share this with people if you like, of course. And I'll just reiterate, I am here every Friday, 12 o'clock Pacific time, and every week I will be talking about another topic. It will probably start with an essential oil, but as you now know, I just use the essential oils as an excuse to talk about a lot of other things. So it's important, and it has a lot of benefits. This is a very, very important medicine, all right? Really important medicine as an herb, closely related again to valerian, and that can open up all kinds of possibilities therapeutically in terms of using Giadamonzi at night with other kinds of nervine tonics and relaxants. For example, you could use this, you could do the little treatment before bed, but you could also drink chamomile and lemon balm tea. You see, something simple like that. So I'm always looking for ways to combine herbs and aromatherapy. I'm going to pause here and see if anybody, let me check and see if there's any questions that have been posted. Okay, so yes, thank you for submitting these questions. Is Giadamonzi used for lucid dreaming? Well, it's an excellent candidate for that. And there are many people who are developing their abilities to do lucid dreaming. And the thing that is predictable about the Giadamonzi and this treatment that I suggested is that those who practice lucid dreaming know that one of the main ways that lucid dreaming can be initiated is when the dreams become active and they become full of triggers. And the triggers are the things that our conscious mind would normally say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? Okay? And these are things that happen in our dream state that we don't pay attention to. And here, I'd like to tell you a very beautiful short story about about a mystical question. And this was about a student who, a spiritual seeker, a meditator, a disciple, who went to their spiritual teacher, went to the guru, and asked the teacher, what is sleep? And the teacher said, ask yourself that question when you are asleep. And the student said, but I cannot do that. And the teacher said, that is sleep. You see, so sleep is really the disconnecting of the rational conscious mind that would normally pay attention to the weirdness that's going on in the dream state. In other words, we are having dreams, but our mind isn't recognizing how outrageous it is, all these things that are happening. So Giadamonzi will create a whole string of these triggers, and those who are developing lucid dreaming will learn to recognize something outrageous that's going on in the dreams that we just take for normal while we're asleep. But suddenly, that ability of the conscious mind to discriminate between something outrageous and waking reality is activated. You see, so yes, the answer is that Giadamonzi can produce more vivid dreams with more potential triggers that the conscious mind would then be able to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? How come I was walking down the street a minute ago and now I'm, floating through the air? Something's going on. So the answer is yes. Giadamonzi is an excellent candidate for lucid dreaming. Okay, so is it safe to use on a baby who had a very traumatic birth and does not sleep well? I would say no. And it's not that Giadamonzi is dangerous, it's that the question is out of context, all right? And the reason why it's out of context is because in order to use any kind of plant medicine, whether it's aromatherapy or herbal medicine, or even just things in a diffuser, okay, we have to be very careful with babies. And in general, using aromatherapy with babies is contraindicated, all right? So this has to do with the safety of aromatherapy on the very young, very sensitive nervous system and respiratory system. So it's not that it can't be, it's just that it's such a specialized way of using it. A tiny, tiny amount in a massage oil, maybe so, but I'll mention here that there will be many questions coming in every week. And some of these I will just refer you to. Talk to me about it as a consultation clinically. And for those of you who might be interested in that, you can find me over at crowconsultations.com, just like it sounds. Okay, can you put it in a diffuser with other oils? Yes, you can, but it's very heavy. What you would like to do is you would like to blend it down. Use it very sparingly as a base note with other types of oils. You might want to do 1 drop of Giadamonzi and 1 drop of sandalwood, and then put that in with some flower oils. For example, other relaxing flower oils like lavender and geranium, and maybe have 2 drops each of those. 2 lavender, 2 geranium, 1 sandalwood, 1 Giadamonzi. And what happens with the base notes of Giadamonzi and sandalwood is that they actually make the floral notes sweeter. And that entire blend could be very nice in a diffuser. All right, can you make this into a pillow spray to use at night? Yes, you could. But again, dilute it down quite a bit, 1 drop in a 4-ounce bottle. But the thing is that oil and water don't mix well, so you're gonna have to really, really shake it up. You could mist it lightly. That would probably be okay. Keep in mind that you may need to gradually increase the dosage, and then you may need to decrease the dosage, depending on how your dream life is responding to it. Okay, so thank you for joining me, and thank you for your interest in these very important subjects. So we do have some of the Bhutanese Jatamanzi over at Florocopia, and we also have a fairly good supply now of the Nepalese Jatamanzi. It does the same things. It's just that the fragrance is a little bit more intense. It's a very, very fine oil. It has a lot of the same stories that the Bhutanese Jatamanzi has, but this is really a true aromatic treasure. They all are, actually. All high quality essential oils are treasures, but we have both, and I see that many of you have experience with this and are reporting wonderful things. Can you take it in capsules? Not the essential oil. You can find Giadamonzi as a dried herb as Ayurvedic medicine, and that is available to take in capsules. What is contraindicated? Well, mostly the contraindications have to do with the same thing valerian would be contraindicated with, and that is if you are a pitta constitution, you are strongly overheated. Okay, but with aromatherapy, it's less important, you see. It's much more flexible as an essential oil for aromatherapy than taking the herb internally. What is the website for the consultation? It is crowconsultations.com. Okay, and you mentioned if you run hot, to use sparingly. Yes, just experiment a bit. All right. So have a wonderful, safe week. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody who is going to be joining me later. And next week, I'm going to be talking about helichrysum, one of the greatest oils with miraculous healing effects for the skin and for soft tissue injuries and bruising and pain. So have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Friday.